Great. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this special session with the Kavya Pearlman. This session we wanted to have with Kavya because she's very much involved in virtual reality and why we need security in virtual reality. First, we will start off with her introduction, what her journey is all about, and as part of the uh, eminent women speaker and a global leader, we want to know what all steps she has taken to come this far and uh, her take on virtual reality. Over to you, Kavya.
Thank you, Vandana, and thank you for inviting me to talk to you guys. Some of you may already know I'm originally from India, so this really warms my heart to present to you guys something like a dream that I thought one day that I would go back to India and talk about security. Hasn't happened, but hey, thanks to technology, it's happening right now. So, as Vandana said, I'm Kavya Pearlman. I am the founder of XR Safety Initiative. It's a security, privacy, ethics initiative for virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. Collectively, we call it XR. And that's like, another term for we refer to for immersive technologies in general. So before I dive into bit of virtual reality and the implications of virtual reality in terms of security, privacy, and risk, I want to share with you how I got into security and how the whole thing led me to now start this privacy and security initiative. So I grew up in India, and I did my bachelor's in computer applications from India, and it was around 2001. So 9/11 had just happened. There were not that many jobs, so I ended up working in call centers in India, and that helped me um, you know really get better at my English and everything. But then I moved to Bangalore in 2002 3. I ended up working for HP, Microsoft, doing tech support. And in about 2007, when I moved to America, I realized I'm like, okay, well, this is a country where you can be anything that you want to be. And I don't necessarily have to be in tech. Like every person in India I know was in tech. So I wanted to do something different. I started to go to school for cosmetology, and ultimately I became a cosmetologist. Those of you who don't know what cosmetologist, it's literally just a fancy term for hairstylist. So I was cutting hair for approximately $10 an hour, doing like 25 hours a week, like a very simple life. So I became a hairstylist, and about 4 years, that's all I did is led a very simple life and did this. And but in the back of my mind, I had this dream that I wanted to make the world a better place someday. But I thought that that ship had already sailed until one day this gentleman that I was cutting hair for, he, while talking to me, he's like, "Hey, you sound very intelligent. You should try to read this book. I recommend this book for you." The book was called Cyber War by Richard Clarke. And many of you probably have either heard about this book or read this book. This is a book that reflects on, and I read this in 2011, 2012. So this book is really, really talking about the emerging and the upcoming threats in the cyber domain. And it was so profound moment for me that I said, okay, you know what? This is exactly what I'm going to do with my life. And I'd almost forgotten whatever I learned in my Bachelor of Computer Applications, but I had to do something because now I have a new dream of, hey, I want to be a cyber security officer. That's how clear it was to me on that day. So I decided to do my master's in network security. First I googled stuff, like what should a person do when you want to be a cybersecurity officer. So ultimately, I had to educate myself. Back then we didn't have um, organizations like Infosecgirls, we didn't have XR safety initiative type organizations talking about the importance of security and privacy. We didn't have so many resources on the internet that you could just go in and probably take a little course here or download some YouTube videos. So really, I had to like step up and do the masters. While doing the masters in network security, I also connected the dot back to my technical career. So I got a job at the university. I was lucky. I got a job at the university doing tech support. So now I had connected back to technology and started learning as much as I could. And then finally, once I finished, got my first tech job as a SecOps, security operations center at Allstate. Then about few months later, I moved to California, and all of that, masters in network security that was in Chicago, moved to California, worked for a law firm building ISO 27001 security framework. Afterwards, as I was just about done with that, I was contacted by Facebook. And this was around 2016 US presidential election time, very interesting time. So I ended up advising them on third party security risks, which, as you guys know, became a very, very significant domain by itself. And, of lately, third party security risks has been really, really, prominent when we talk about security privacy in general. And then right after that, I became the information security director of Linden Lab, which happened to be the creator of the oldest virtual world called Second Life. And then they had just launched their virtual reality platform called Sensar. So all of these experiences gave me the foundation to now start a global initiative called XR Safety Initiative. All these unique experiences help me understand how the technologies that are emerging, that are immersive, can potentially be impacted if we don't pay attention to application security, security in general, or privacy, etc. So, with that, I would like to dive into our today's topic, which is the importance of security and privacy. So, first, many of you probably have heard about virtual reality. What exactly is virtual reality? Some of you actually recognize this person because I know you guys are AppSec community. So this is my good friend, Carolyn Wong. And I've been using this picture in a couple of other presentations because this is such an awesome picture. It really just like points out, the virtual reality sort of environment. It has the head mounted display, and this was a day Caroline actually visited me at the lab. And this was her first time putting on the head mounted display, looking into, this virtual reality experience. It's called The Wonderful You. You can Google it, thewonderfulyou.com, and it basically is a journey of yourself starting from a fetus all the way to the human development. But the way it works is as soon as you put on the head mounted display, and then you can use these touch controllers that Caroline is holding in this picture. So you can use these touch controllers to navigate within this immersive environment. And you can see on the screen that is a screen that Caroline is seeing everywhere, the development of the child, and she has a headset, so it's really telling her a narrative. And you see some of these touch controllers that are used to determine the accuracy, the location of her hands, and the coordination between her head position, all of that. And now something to be noticed here, which is not evident, is it is a tethered headset, so it is actually connected via a HDMI cable to a heavy computing GPU, like a computing device. So a real computer that has a heavy GPU. So those are the components that kind of enable virtual reality. So sometimes, people say, "Oh yeah, there was this camera, the 360-degree videos they take, they refer to it as virtual reality." I beg to differ. While it may seem that you are in this immersive environment, I would call it an immersive technology, but that's not virtual reality. Virtual reality to me is really a fully artificially created digital environment, which is kind of what here we see. So, moving on to another very interesting aspect of virtual reality, which is social VR. And that's also something I want to explain because it complicates things. So, thus far, we saw Caroline in virtual reality environment on her own, experiencing something and going through the virtual reality environment. And another significant moment of that day was Caroline was pregnant at that time, so just experiencing this development of human fetus was probably a psychologically profound moment for her, and I noticed it was. So when it comes to social VR, though, we're talking about being able to meet with people in virtual reality in this immersive digitally created environment. And you really just have to experience it. I mean, 2D really doesn't do it justice, because once you step into it, it literally feels like you are actually there in this digitally created environment. So in this picture, this is created by Linden Lab. This environment is called Social Hub. It was created by Linden Lab developers, the Sensor team. And this is me right here. So you can assume any identity. The platform that I am using here is Sensor. So you can assume any identity here. You can see I have the glowy avatar, I have glowy hair, and I wanted to have wings, so I have wings. These are these attachments that you can attach to your identity. Here, a bunch of my friends and a bunch of strangers were just hanging out and talking about most likely philosophy or how people can be really jerks, maybe. So this is what makes things very interesting, because as you know, now this is like, think about what can you do when you are meeting with people, and you can potentially social engineer with them. In fact, I did several social engineering experiments where I talked to somebody and try to exfiltrate information just by saying, "Oh, you sound very interesting. Oh, okay." And many a times I also noticed that a female voice, whatever your avatar is, or a female avatar, a female voice happens to be, you can really do better social engineering with guys, or strangers. They are more prone to trusting you in a way, or revealing information. So some of these social engineering aspects I started to notice. You can send them a malicious link, imagine, because there is chat enabled in these social environments. Another aspect, so now going on to the second picture, this is an environment created by, we call them creators or developers. So in many of these social VR platforms, you as a person, as a developer, can create an immersive environment using various codes, tools like Maya 3D or Blender, and you can put together a whole world altogether. So this is Copper Valley by Anu Manu, who is a creator at CSR platform. So they have created this Copper Valley, and all of these trees, these chairs that you see, these are literally attachments that some of them are clickables. So now imagine if I'm a malicious developer, or not malicious, but I'm just notorious or kind of goofy. I could potentially now build an attachment that has malicious code in it, and anybody who clicks it could potentially install that code. So now I've really created some, like a malware like scenario or a bucket like scenario, just by creating this immersive environment, and people come into it trusting terms of services of the platform, but what little do they know, they're going to get infected. So all of these scenarios we have to think about now as the development of these technologies happen. Some of the couple of the cases that I personally happen to have the privilege to work on is we did a security awareness month in virtual reality. So when you talk about security, sometimes people roll their eyes. It's a kind of a dry topic. So I was like, what if we could take everybody to a nice and exotic location and talk about security. So this is exactly what we did. We created a replica of Taj Mahal, and of course, I'm originally from India, so I love Taj Mahal. And I really just wanted to see, like, can we really just replicate the whole model? So we created this absolute real life scale model of Taj Mahal, invited a couple of speakers, and started to talk about what people should do with respect to security, very similar to what we are doing right now, except we all had our head mounted display, HMD devices, and some of people were dialing from Germany, from here, and it literally felt like we were all hanging out at this lounge that we created right next to Taj Mahal. So now you can see, using virtual reality, you can really create so many profound use cases. The very minimum and the really awesome one is training, is recreating something that we are doing here in an immersive environment, because it does have a deeper impact on your psyche. It has a deeper retention rate as well. So something that you experience immersively, where you don't have, I mean, currently I'm looking at the chair, the tables, all this attention grabbing distraction go away, and you're fully immersed in the topic that is being shared with you. So it has a deeper impact. Some of the other profound use cases that I and in fact, this is not all of it, but this is just some of it that could have potential security and privacy implications that we got to pay attention to, is construction. So this is a scissor lift that this person is operating using the VR headset, and be able to control the lift and lift whatever weight or any maneuver things during the construction time. Now, when you talk about augmented reality or virtual reality in construction, we've literally gone as far as being able to create an entire building and bring the entire crew to simulate how are they going to execute. So when you can simulate it and then you perform, the performance of the crew was significantly higher, because they have now seen in real time sort of environment what they're supposed to do. So really profound applications, really profound use cases that we are discovering. Another one that you can see in the other picture is um, training nurses and doctors to perform very complex surgery. Now, because these VR tools are getting so accurate, you can literally do some of these surgeries, record them in virtual reality. You can recreate a human body model, the internal organs and everything. So, and this is not something, both of these use cases, they're actually real life use cases. Flow care, which is currently is being used to train nurses and doctors using virtual reality. And in the near future, what we are going to see is development and adoption of all of these technologies in at a massive scale. And that's what we have to kind of be concerned about, that what happens when the bad guys come into this domain and start to do all kinds of funky stuff. So after talking about all these profound use cases, we know that virtual reality is absolutely changing lives. We talked about training and education, we talked about construction. The same application could be used in manufacturing and advertising. Now, if hundreds and millions of people are congregating in a social virtual environment, you would think that people would like to advertise, like, hey, drink Coca-Cola when you step outside of this VR. Or better yet, I'm looking forward to the day when I can actually order a pizza in virtual reality and have it delivered via a drone to my house. And I hope that day comes true pretty soon, because the technology is already out there. What's really stopping from this to happening is the trust. The drone technology is there. They have already been testing delivery. The virtual reality technology, being able to order something in VR, it already exists. Things that I personally worked on sometimes. But if we don't have the trust, then how can we actually trust these technologies? How can we rely that somebody has not messed with my order, or my identity is I am who I am? So those are the things that we got to think about as all of these things are being impacted. A huge one is tourism. So I recently took a trip to Istanbul and went to this particular place, Hagia Sophia. It was a museum, and it was absolutely crowded. So within like a matter of a few minutes, I was like, all right, let me take some selfie, and I'm just gonna go visit it in VR. Because, you know, it really is a replica and a true, feeling of actually being there. So I don't have to struggle with the crowd. While I'm already there, I took a few pictures right off the bat. I was like, okay, I'll just tour this in VR. And likewise, myself, some of my friends, we have together traveled to several places, including the top of the Mount Everest. That is actually my favorite place to go and sit there and meditate. So I would go in Google Earth, has this immersive virtual reality locations. You can pretty much put the address, fly over to the location, and enjoy your tourism at this point. So a lot of these things are really changing lives. Now we have to obviously worry about, now all of this is coming for us. How about cyber attacks in virtual reality? And since most of the people that I'm talking to today, you guys are application security experts or aspiring application security or security experts, security students, we should pay attention to attacks in virtual reality. Before I go there, I want to thank my friend Ibrahim Bajili. He is also the co-founder of XR Safety Initiative. His team at University of New Haven, his cybersecurity research team, and him, these are the guys who discovered novel attacks in virtual reality, which is something that I would share with you right now. And what they did was something very profound. They documented all of these attacks, and then they attributed to the threat categories that we should look into as we talk about virtual reality and just immersive technologies in general. So let's dive in. Hacking virtual reality, they were able to establish some educational module, discover new attacks that have never been heard before, that have never happened before, but it was done in a with a certain assumptions, whether a person is connected to the internet, whether that computer has already been compromised or not. So they documented all of these things. They developed a few tools to be able to, so the custom APIs to be able to hack or manipulate these environments. And of course that led to further development of these attack tools. And then they obviously created this sort of a framework, created this forensic artifact. So now if somebody has manipulated things in virtual reality, you can forensically investigate and attribute that that has happened. And that is very, very important. As the mass adoption of these technologies happen, we have to be able to attribute what is the true nature or what is the truth. Did somebody actually did order a pizza, or is this some hacker just distributing pizza everywhere? Like, I'm just giving you a very hypothetical example, but there is a lot of bad things that could happen. As we go dive into these attacks, you'll know what I'm talking about. So virtual reality attack surface, they kind of made these assumption, and as you can see, here we have the user putting on this head mounted device. And so these are some of these input and output data flows that can potentially be tapped into, manipulated, the network data flow that can be manipulated, the output data flow, which is basically the output is going in from a computer to now, this head mounted display is the output device. It's no longer a screen. It's really just your entire consciousness is experiencing through this head mounted display. So In a general setting, these input and output flow are different, but when you talk about virtual reality or immersive environment, it is completely different. And then when it comes to data, the data is traveling to the application database. That could be in an AWS environment, that could be locally located on a server. And then sometimes what's happening even more is these things are being live streamed to social media and other web services that they have their own database and whatnot. So all of these things now, set up a nice attack surface, as you can imagine. So what the researchers at New Haven University did is they tried to compromise these data flows. And one of the assumptions in some of these research that I'm presenting today is they made is either the workstation or the computer that is tethered to virtual reality already compromised, or in some cases they just had a simple internet connection. And once you know that the person is connected to the internet in today's day and age, it's not that complicated or tough to either do a reconnaissance, send them a phishing email, or do some kind of a other dictionary or other type of attacks to really compromise the machine. So some of the times, if you dive into the research further, it's making that assumption. And here we have this VR application that is connected to, in some cases, Steam VR. These names, Steam VR is like a platform just like Sansar, OpenVR, another platform just like Sansar. These are platforms that allow users to go into these environments, build some of these environments. And then we have this Vive and Oculus. These are two companies that actually manufacture and have their own platform within the head mounted display. They manufacture the head mounted display. Oculus is by Facebook. Vive is HTC. So yeah, these are two main organizations that they try to document these cyber attacks for. One of the things that is currently being noted and is going to become more and more evident is, before I go into the novel attacks, that's what I'm going to discuss about, is some of these attacks that they discovered is really not, there was nothing novel about their you know about these attacks. These attacks literally exploited the traditional vulnerabilities. It just so happens these applications are social VR applications. So one of the applications they exploited is big screen VR. Big screen VR, uh, and they did it but using just basic OWASP top 10 vulnerability exploitation. So big screen VR is one of my favorite apps, actually, where you can share your screen. Well, first of all, you can step into an immersive environment. First, you go to a lobby like environment where everybody can join in, like strangers, friends, anyone. It has the universal permission, so anyone comes into the lobby, and then you can pick a particular private room or a public room, which allows you to chat with other users. So this right here is one of my favorite environments. It's like north balcony, south balcony, north balcony, where you are sitting on a balcony and it's completely immersive. It feels like you're in this amazing metropolitan city looking over the city. And whatever I have on my screen, I can throw it up on a massive screen, and together we can watch movies, videos. It really creates this telepresence. So I have thus far had meetings, from all over the country, all over the globe. Like I've had meetings with the UK, India, people in Italy, people in Germany, and just hung out. And if I wanted to share with them some kind of use cases, concepts, and just right here, this uh, presentation, I was successfully able to do that. However, when it came to the social VR attack, the researchers set up a command and control server at the lobby, and then they infected a particular machine. Let's say Mallory is the victim. So by infecting this Mallory's machine, the victim machine, wherever the victim went into a private room, they were able to eavesdrop on them. They were not only infect this particular machine, but if there was a Bob's private room and a bunch of other people joined, they were able to infect their machine as well. And so something to point out is it's nothing new. The way they actually perform this is by exploiting the old traditional vulnerability where it is displayed right here. These are, OWASP, like input validation was being done on the client side, and there was literally no authentication. So it created this optimum environment where they could do like a cross-site scripting using their username and whatnot. So all of this resulted into, then telling them about these attacks that, hey, we can eavesdrop, we can enable disable mic without any permission, even if it's disabled or enabled. We can do all sorts of things. And eventually, the CEO of a big screen virtual reality application, they did take some measures, ethical disclosure, all of that. But as you can see, virtual reality application is really essentially a web application in most cases. So you can now use the same traditional cyber attack techniques to attack these things. Now let's talk about some of the novel attacks that they discovered. So when it comes to Oculus VR or the Oculus head-mounted display, it doesn't have a front-facing camera, but the Vive head-mounted display does have a front-facing camera. So there is a research paper, and it's really just it's mentioned here in the subnotes. You can get the details there. But what the researchers documented is they were able to enable, disable, and stream the video feed without the knowledge of the attacker, without the knowledge of the victim, and essentially just look inside the victim's room. So if you are a Vive user using this attack, the attacker can pretty much eavesdrop on what is around you and what are you up to, all of that stuff. Now, if you combine some of these attacks, that can really then lead to loss of trust, safety issues. Like it could really lead to real danger. And one of those similar attacks that the researchers discovered was chaperone attack, where when you enter into these virtual reality environment, most of and actually every single one of them would tell you to create this called like a play area. So you just go around with your touch controllers and you define this boundary that basically gives you, and if anybody has seen like holodeck or Star Trek, it reminds me of holodeck, where there is this imaginary boundary. That's as far as you can go. If you go farther than that, then you are stepping out. So it's like a virtual guardian gradient system that will prevent you from running into obstacles. What they were able to do is disable these boundaries. So even if you are stepping out of these coordinates that you defined, these boundaries would not pop up, would not tell you that, hey, you're stepping out. And now that could create a dangerous scenario, especially if you are near a massive obstacle. Like for me, I'm right next to a mirror wall. I could run into a wall, and I know that my friends and myself, we get really passionate. So there was actually a video game called Echo VR. So in virtual reality, we are in this zero G environment and just combating with each other. And oh my gosh, one of my friends had actually broken a $3,000 OLED TV. And many other damages have happened specifically because they didn't enable these boundaries. So disabling these boundaries without the knowledge of the users can have detrimental effects. One could kill you, actually, if they could stumble you down through the stairs or something. Another one attack that they discovered is overlay attack. Overlay attack is nothing but, taking over your entire view, whatever is being projected on this head mounted display. Now, really just taking it over. So let's be honest, there is going to be use cases where people would either watch pornographic contents or talk about objectionable items. Who knows what people would do thinking that this is a private setting. And if an attacker gains knowledge of such a thing, they could literally hijack your device either, and they could potentially, hold you accountable for ransom. Be like, hey, I got all your secrets. and I'm not going to release this thing. And they could really harass you. And there could be other implication too, where they could interject the code that is not a very nice view of Mount Everest. It's instead a very scary view, and you can't get away from it. So more and more time that people start spending, these attacks become more relevant and something that we need to address and pay attention to. And now combine that with human joystick attack. So this is another profound one, which is only possible, or at least so far they've only documented it with tethered, means something that is connected, VR headset connected to the GPU or the computer, where the subject in these applications, these are Longbow, Zorex, Slingshot, all these are virtual reality applications. And basically, they documented these results, and you can pull up the paper at your own convenience. I, hope, Vandana, we can provide the slides to everybody so they can dive into it. But I just want to go over the overview. So in the virtual environment, this is where they're supposed to be, the green dot. And what the attackers or the researchers did is they manipulated the person to now walk all the way across the room in the physical room. And when the person took off the headset, they really was like, wow, how did I get here? And they had no idea as how they actually walked across the room, and they had already, because they are already in this immersive environment. And by manipulating that immersive digitally created environment, the researchers were able to walk the person across the room. So just to recap, you have all of these novel attacks, and this is just a few researchers. I'm pretty sure there is so much stuff out there that we haven't quite discovered yet. So to recap, you can compromise your system, of course, malicious link, attachments, all of that. We talked about camera attack. We talked about looking wherever. They're calling it tracker attack, using hijacking the camera, the front facing camera. And chaperone attack, where you can remove these gradient boundaries. Human joystick attack, we could pretty much, if you can move a person in within the immersive reality, or in the physical environment, you could probably throw them down the stairs, you could kill them. And then finally block your entire vision, calling it the overlay attack. So based on all these research and some more, they established a few threat categories, which can now be used to further enhance and do the research and potentially build protection mechanism. So one of the threat categories is input protection. So these are like, we talked about the granular attacks and how they are carried out, the vulnerabilities that can be exploited. But now we're talking about a bit of a zoomed out version of how we divide these attacks into threat categories. So input protection, something so we need to worry about whatever data, the privacy, like when you hijack a vision or the front facing camera, you are now looking at information that is out there that somebody didn't even give consent to. So we need to care about what happens when this is input is being hijacked. So we need to ensure that privacy and security of these VR AR system, whatever input is being fed into them, is secure. We need to worry about the data protection, which means some of the data that these devices, these applications and platforms can collect goes all the way to, we talked about the coordinates that determine your hand movement. Now we are talking about, in a very near future, in fact it's already happening, is the eye movement, the heat map, where you're looking. So we're calling it gaze data, pose data, how you are, maybe I have a tendency to tilt my head to the right hand side, so now that becomes an identifier for me. So now you can actually accurately establish this is actually Kavya, and maybe you can replicate that and do defamation. So all of these data protection, when this data travels to a third party and is no longer in my control as a user, or as even as a CEO of a particular application, it's going over to Facebook, to Oculus. We don't know what kind of protections are in there. So these are things that we have to worry about. Output protection. So the output that is, going to the user, just like we said, the overlay attack, we need to protect these things. And a few other threat categories is user interaction protection. So most of these social VR environment, they offer you these interactive environment. What if we are speaking with a malicious user and they happen to now exchange a link with you, and that happens to be a malicious link, you execute it. We need to educate people about these type of things, and obviously embed these protections as we are building the environments. And finally, VR device protection. Some of these devices, have their own authentication mechanisms. So what if somebody actually breaks that authentication? In fact, one of the moments that, this meme that I put out there, because there's tons of text, so here's some visual for you. On, I think, March 18th, I was at the lab, and suddenly I was informed that all of the Oculus devices have been soft bricked. So for about almost 24 hours, nobody was able to do anything, and all they could see is this pop-up warning: can't reach Oculus runtime services. uh, and I was like, within like a matter of 3 seconds, I was like, oh my god, it's happening. I thought that, hackers have really done something. But then within a few seconds, we realized that someone over at Facebook Oculus forgot or did not do the automated renewal of a firmware certificate. So it wasn't hackers. However, we know that that could possibly happen someday. Maybe not yet. So moving on, we've heard about the term XR so far. What is XR now? So XR now is being referred. XR really is, bunch of the people, the experts came together and started talking about, hey, there is a lot of these immersive technologies. Can we combine them into one specific term? So they arrived at, extended reality, XR, where augmented reality. When you talk about augmented reality, it's really just a overlay of digital objects onto the real world. So if you have this head mounted display, or you can use your phone sometimes, some of you may have already been using this, like the filters that you have on Instagram, that is augmented reality. But when you talk about virtual reality, we're talking about taking over an entire vision or full immersion into these fully artificially created environments like we saw before. So that's the little bit of a difference. And then it gets a little bit murky and gets a bit confusing, but then it's the mixed reality, where there is the virtual reality environment where you can interact with them in both real time and virtual, which is something that we saw. Remember the example of the forklift, the scissor forklift? So yes, there is the virtual reality environment, but you are actually interacting with the real time components, the real life forklift or the scissor lift, using this virtual reality environment that was created. So that's like a example of mixed reality. So together we are calling it XR. And why should we really care about what's happening here? Because, hey, very simple, lot of money to be made, and wherever there is a lot of money involved, there is going to be bad guys to disturb the technology, to potentially make money. So we have to fix this problem before it gets too dangerous, because more and more money is going to come into these domains. We are expecting, like, 500 million by the end of 2020, and then more than that. So we need to gear up as security professionals and pay attention, because bad guys are going to come and come for the money as well. Uh, Another something that I wanted to point out is, how are we actually making standards and policies in XR? This is the funniest tweet, but it's the best. Is Timothy West, 22nd August 2016. He just tweets out, he's like, hey, how are we feeling about identifying AR, VR, MR, XR? And then he had a bunch of likes, and we have arrived at, let's call it XR. So this is how, if this is how we are developing standard policies, definitions, then that's really, I mean, I know a lot of people do policy making and development of foreign policies using Twitter. But I don't think that's going to work for XR or immersive technologies, or that's going to work for universally for all of us. We really need to sit down and document these things and standardize and create policies that are not just somebody tweeting out and 50 people who are on Twitter saying, yeah, let's do it. Uh, we really need to come together as XR stakeholders and community and researchers that are specific to cybersecurity and other stuff to now combat these things. So what are we doing? And to hit that point is that's exactly why we created XR Safety Initiative. And using this initiative, we are soliciting academic entities like universities. Our goal is to provide them funding so they could do these kinds of research, kind of like the New Haven University researchers did. We want to help these academic research entities set up the virtual reality, set up the augmented reality labs, and actually focus on the security and privacy area to find new attacks. Because what we documented is nothing. There is so much bad stuff that's coming for these immersive environments, uh, and we need to stay ahead of the bad guys. So the only way to do it is do more research, and then whatever we discover from these, just like we attribute it to threat categories, we need to standardize them. We have NIST standards, we have OWASP top 10. We need to establish that for all of these immersive technologies. And then once that happens, uh, some of these companies, they're still going to continue to hoard data or do their, do their practices based on money and profit. In that case, we need to reach out to policymakers now, regulators, which actually XR Safety Initiative has taken the time to now start opening dialogue with European Commission, for example. And the hope is that we will instill something like like a GDPR like regulation, general data protection regulation, which actually enforces some of the guidelines that must be followed when it comes to private data, when it comes to personal data. So when we are able to establish that there is grave risk in these immersive technologies, then we can use the data to guide the policy regulators that we have to work together to now instill some guidelines. And then essentially what we are doing right now, we need to continue doing that, is really encourage critical thinking amongst the people as they step into virtual reality. So just putting on a headset and just walking around and doing whatever, no, go there with the awareness that this is literally internet. There are people that are going to want to exfiltrate information from you. There will be people who will send you malicious links. There will be individuals who will try to become your best friends and probably ask you your address and try to come to your house. I mean, and let alone, I mean, forget, you don't have to ask. I mean, if you can attribute using the IP address where the person is located, you've almost, you've geolocated them, you've tracked them. So all of these things could happen. So when you are even a user, a developer, or a CEO, these things are something that you have to think about. What does that actually look like in real terms? So currently, XR Safety Initiative has this working group running. We are calling it XRDCF. It's XR Data Classification Framework Public Working Group. So using this working group, we meet every Thursday. We talk about the data classification within XR. So I, previously talked about gaze pose biometrics data, but what does that look like at the developer level? What exactly is being stored? What coordinates, what metadata is being stored at the database base level? So now we're trying to define and sort of bifurcate the sensitive and the non-sensitive data. So then once we have this classification and standardize, companies can either adopt that, developers can actually internalize that and start to put more protection on this data. So this is like a foundational work that is being done. And obviously, I alone could never do this. So that's why we set up this public working group. If you go to xrsi.org, you can actually be a part of this public working group. Meet with us every Thursday at 9 a.m. PST, where you have these brilliant minds come together and start to really tackle this problem at the foundational level. Our real hope and the outcome that we are hoping from this is to be able to use the same technologies to create an immersive data visualization. So think about if somebody could just upload a sample set of data, and if they could put a head mounted display and visualize that data in terms of, oh, this is sensitive, this is non-sensitive. So it's really hard to imagine unless you've really stepped into virtual reality, but that's the hope, that we are going to use the same technologies that we are trying to tackle the problems for, to tackle some of these problems. um, Something that I think you guys should be very, very excited about, I know I'm very excited about, is XR Safety Initiative is currently in the talks with some of the major bug bounty program providers. And you guys already know the names of those. Examples could be, bug crowd. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not saying that these are the people that we are talking to, but like Cobalt.io, bug crowd, all of these bug bounty programs. So we're in conversation with some of them to try to build a very XR specific bug bounty program where researchers, and now it's more than just academia. Now researchers, ethical hackers, you guys could hack VR, hack XR, and report these bugs and get make money out of it. So this is a new initiative. So you should, I recommend that you should keep following xrsi.org on Twitter. You should follow me if you want to keep up, and look at the website, express the interest. There is a form that you can go on to, and keep up with these things. And hopefully before the end of 2020, we should be able to roll out this XR bug bounty program. We're still like, in the preliminary conversations, but because I'm talking to you guys, because most of you are interested in initiatives like that, I really just took the liberty to reveal this to you. So finally, I just want to point out there are things that I can do that you guys can't, and there are things that you guys can do that I just absolutely can't. I'm not a quote unquote ethical hacker. I know all about vulnerabilities programs. I know a lot about research work around these things, but I don't actually sit and run Burp Suite. I've done that a few times, but I don't run Burp Suite, do fuzzing and all of these activities. That's a lot of you guys. So that's why I really would like you to get involved with this initiative and start hacking, start ethical hacking, and start reporting these things to the proper entities, so that we can now build these standards. We can create awareness, start talking about these things. Finally, I do want to do a time check here. 8:23. So I just want to leave you guys with this really amazing quote from DevSecOps Manifesto. We must adapt our ways to ensure data security and privacy issues are not left behind because we were too slow to change. So with that, I want to hand this back over to Vandana. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to me. If I went a little too fast, you can always go back to the recording. Vandana, it's all you then.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was amazing session. Let me check if we have any questions for you. I'm sure I'm gonna go back and be associated with the XR project, because this is actually very interesting. This is something which people should be associated with, and there are a lot of questions which are gonna come, especially related to virtual reality. So in the chat box, we do not have any question at the moment. So before we close the session, do you have any parting words which you want to pass it on to the listeners?
Yes, a couple of things throughout my journey that I have learned. I want to tell especially when I'm talking to girls, I would like to tell you guys that, when I was a hairstylist and I really didn't know what to do in life, and I had this awakening of like, I want to be a cybersecurity officer. Um, Please, if you ever dream, pursue your dreams, follow your passions. And if my journey and my success is any example as to dreams do come true, you owe it to yourself. We have one life. If you ever dream about getting into cybersecurity or doing these amazing things that some other people have done, or even doing better things, you owe it to yourself to get into cybersecurity, and you will be successful because passion is what drives our field. So absolutely get into cybersecurity, do your research, do it with passion. And the other thing I want to say is don't be afraid. These are immersive technologies. It may seem like it is far beyond your reach, but reach out to me, reach out to Vandana, reach out to people. And this is a normal response. When first time everybody hears about XR and virtual reality, people don't have that many questions. But then you think over it and you internalize it, you might have questions. So feel free to hit me up on Twitter. My email is kavya@xrsi.org. I would love to answer any questions. If you're ever in doubt whether this is a career for you or something, talk to me. I can tell you, I have never been bored one day in my life since I took this career. So this is a very awesome field. I welcome you all to now start hacking virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, and start building together with us. Thank you. Vandana, any other questions in case we have any questions?
No, thank you so much. Actually, this is really interesting because I have seen girls with a lot of questions on cybersecurity, even in general, whether is it a right career or not. So you have put in the right thoughts that you don't have to think about it. You can reach out to all the people who are there, and you have given your email address. It's very wonderful that they can touch base with you anytime, especially on Twitter or LinkedIn. And thank you so much for taking out time and providing the session for the girls. It's very inspirational.
Thank you. And namaste. I forgot to say that in the beginning. I was like, oh my God, I'm talking to India. I do speak Hindi as well, so don't hesitate. I speak Hindi. So namaste. It was a wonderful session. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you. So I owe you a T-shirt. So anytime we meet next, we will give you the Hacker Womania T-shirt.
That's what I did it for, Vandana. Thank you.
Thank you.
So looking forward to it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.